In this video, I'm going to demonstrate to you 3 spine-safe core exercises. These 3 core exercises were termed the Big 3 by Dr. McGill, who is a spine biomechanics specialist who started out at the University of Waterloo. I actually got to see him personally there and go through the Big 3 with him after I had disc injuries. These 3 exercises are just fantastic for strengthening your core, preventing disc injuries, and for rehabbing disc injuries. I highly recommend you that if you do have a history of back pain or disc injuries, that you try these out with me. So the whole idea behind these 3 exercises is to learn how to brace properly with a neutral spine. So no crunching or sit-ups where the spine is in flexion, or any like Superman's where the spine is in extension, because all of that can aggravate a disc injury that you may have. These bracing exercises can also transfer to any lifts that you're doing. The more I practice bracing my core, the better my squats and deadlifts, the safer my squats and deadlifts became once I was rehabbed enough to start doing them again. Number 1, the side plank. On your side, line your feet up, one in front of the other. The foot of the top leg goes in front. Lift your hips off the floor. Your bottom ankle, knee is in line with the hip, and the shoulder, and the head. And McGill cues for you to have your top arm across your chest, and your hand can just rest on your bottom shoulder. It's important to note in this position that your hips are not pushed back. Your hips are all the way through that, so that you're keeping a straight line. You're not hinged at any point. Number 2, the bird dog. On all fours, hands underneath the shoulders, knees underneath the hips. We want to make sure that our spine is neutral. It's not arched, nor is it flexed. So neutral spine, engage the core, which is also called bracing, so brace, and raise opposite arm, opposite leg. And when this happens, you don't want to feel any movement across here. So brace, opposite leg, opposite arm, back down. And we aren't going to switch every time. If you need to, you can put your weight back down on your hand and your knee, but I recommend that unless you have to, you don't. So we're just going to come down and sweep the floor before we go back up. Brace the core and up, come down, sweep the floor, and back up. So hopefully you saw minimal to no movement through the low back. What I often see with people doing this, number 1, they switch every time. And number 2, the hip raises. No, that defeats the whole purpose of the exercise. We're trying to brace and keep the hips stable as we have our limbs moving. When you think about this, this happens all the time in daily activity and sports. We have to be able to keep our spine safe by bracing the core while our arms and legs are simultaneously doing tasks. It's really important to not lift your leg higher than your natural range of motion in your hip allows, or else you start getting spinal extension. This is where my natural range of motion allows, while keeping my spine flat. Look at the difference now. This is me reaching. We don't want that extension. I often tell people to really focus on bracing their core during this one. And when they raise the opposite leg, opposite arm off, when that leg raises, you should feel like you're gonna fall off to that side if it weren't for your core. So your core really has to brace and act to counteract that movement if your hips haven't lifted. So if my hip lifts, no problem. No core stress involved. I'm not even bracing. I could do this all day. If my hips stay right where they are and there's no extension involved, I really have to brace the core to keep from falling off to that side. Here's a tip to feel if you've lifted or dropped your shoulder or your hip as you're moving. So say I drop my shoulder as I move. So I go into raising the opposite leg, opposite arm. I come down. Look where my hand hits the ground. It hits it so soon, that's a good indication that I've dropped my shoulder. Whereas if I lift my shoulder without realizing it, when I come down to sweep the floor, where's my hand? It's nowhere near the floor. That means I've lifted it too much and I must drop a bit. If you've raised your hip, which this is the most common one, if my hip raises and it comes down, there's going to be air between my knee and the floor. Number 3, the modified curl up. This one is going to be tough to teach over video because I really depend on the feedback of watching people do it. But we're going to try this anyway. It's going to be weird. It's something you probably haven't tried unless you've done McGill exercises before. We're going to be on our back. One knee stays up, one leg is straight. So your classic sit-up or curl up would be a lot of spinal flexion with your mid-back, low back pushing into the ground, which can be damaging to discs. So we're going to make sure we keep that mid-back arch that you have by placing our hands underneath there. You can either have your fist together like this or hand on top of hand. I prefer fists together. So that's what I'm going to do. But if you have less of an arch, you might be more comfortable with just hands stacked. Okay, so now, if I raise my upper body off the ground, the idea is that my spine does not round and push into the ground. We're keeping that natural arch. So it's a disc-safe movement. Here's the thing. We are going to do a curl up without actually flexing or curling our spine, okay? McGill says imagine that your upper back and head are on a scale and you just want to bring that scale to 0. No more movement, just to 0, and then back down. You're going to brace your core. It's almost like as if you're going to cough or sneeze. So brace. And then you're going to raise your upper back and your head off the ground without flexing your spine, which means your head cannot lead. Your head stays in line with your chest. I did that one a little higher for the sake of demonstration. But remember, we're just bringing the scale to 0. So as soon as you feel the weight of your upper back and your head come off the ground, that's when you stop, pause for just a second, and then go back down. A cue that often helps people is I actually cue them to lead with their chest. Even though you're not supposed to lead with chest or head, they're supposed to move together. But people are so used to leading with the head that when you cue them to lead with the chest, they actually end up moving together. So I say imagine there's a string pulling from your chest towards the ceiling. That string is pulling up on your chest and raising your back and your head off the floor. You can help your elbows with your elbows. You can help by pushing into the ground a little bit as you raise. but don't push so much that it's taking away the work from your core, okay? So you would do several reps in this position and then just switch which leg is up and do several reps in the other position. And make sure you're breathing too. It's good to, before you go, just practice being in this position, bracing the spine, and making sure that you can still breathe while keeping a core brace. Try out Stu McGill's Big 3. Get back to us with any feedback or questions. I can't say enough about those 3 exercises and how they helped me rehab disc injuries. And even if you don't have disc injuries or any back troubles, do these now to prevent future back troubles. You will not regret it.